What's up everybody and welcome back to my channel. Do you remember how the last time I recapped Kail's Baby Mama's No Dramas podcast, we talked about how she vowed that she'd never talk about Javi ever on her podcast again? Well, in this week's episode, it seemed like she all but exposed him for fighting to keep Chris Lopez away from his son, Lincoln. Listen, this is all just my speculation based on what she said on the podcast, but oh my God, it felt like she poured a boiling hot cup of tea on my face, you guys. But listen, this podcast is full of gems, so I'm gonna back it up and recap it from the beginning, and then we'll really dig into that when we get to that part. There's still a lot of crazy stuff to cover. So just an FYI, this week's podcast guest was her first baby daddy, Joe Rivera again. He kicks it off by talking about how sad he is that he won't be able to spend Thanksgiving with his son Isaac this year because remember, he and Kail split their holidays. Kail doesn't want Christmas this year. She's gonna have Thanksgiving. They're gonna spend it with her family. So it's gonna be just Joe V and their daughter Vivi. And he was like, oh, I'm not even gonna see him all week actually because I agreed to give Kail the Sunday as well. So like that makes me quite sad. And when Kail asked him what his regrets are when it came to their co-parenting journey, he said that it wasn't fighting hard enough at the beginning. He's like, listen, I was young. I didn't understand my rights. Like I kept on settling for things I didn't want to settle. Like we never really reached a judge because I kept on settling. And that's something that I deeply, deeply regret. Like I should have had Isaac 50-50 all along. When we were living in Pennsylvania, that state leans a lot more towards the mother, so I was only getting like 6 nights a month with my child, and you know, I really regret not fighting harder for that. I didn't know it was possible. He said that it was sad that typically the parent with the most money to draw things out in court wins the most time with the child at the end of the day, but like, you know, we're getting a little bit more gender equality when it comes to custody and stuff like that, so it is improving a little bit, and he's happy to hear that. Now, so this is where Kail first breaks her vow that she made last week to no longer talk about her second baby daddy, Javi Marroquin. She actually goes, you know, I mean, I vowed not to talk about him, but and so she goes on in. She says that they recently had a little bit of a thing where Javi asked her outside of their parenting agreement for a certain day with Lincoln, but she couldn't do it because she was doing family photos with Lincoln. And so she felt bad about something like that happening. But you know what? She does advocate for people to try and do those things where they ask, hey, I need this from you. Will you give it to me? Etc., negotiating. It's just unfortunate that it could not work out this time around. And then she brings up this hypothetical question that Joe drags her with a little bit later on. She goes, you know, like, what if you do that? Like, you guys have those little agreements outside of the major in stone written agreement, and someone kind of reneges on it, or like pretends they forgot, or genuinely forgets. What do you do? And he goes, yeah, Kail, what do you do when someone reneges on an agreement? I feel like I should be asking you that question. Listen, we've been watching Teen Mom 2 for like a decade. We all know that that is Kail's typical MO. So I'm Team Joe on that. It was very, very ironic of Kail to ask that sort of a question as if she wouldn't be the expert who could answer it herself. Joe says that, you know what, for things like that, like people need to go back on their word knowing that it's going to come back to bite them in the ass down the line. He's like, listen, like there's something that goes on in sales where if someone does something like that to you, then like they're doing it with the knowledge that like for 3 months they can't ask you for nothing because you're still going to be harboring that against them. So tread very lightly when it comes to stuff like that. And then Kail kind of hints about Javi again. She goes, you know what? I feel like that kind of an agreement can work between you and I. Like, you know, just, well, what do you call it? Spoken word, like good faith agreement. But I don't know if it could work out with my other baby daddies. In fact, she gives an example of one of her baby daddies going back on his word, but doesn't name his name. But it's obviously Javi because Chris does not have a written agreement with her. She goes, you know what? That recently happened with one of my baby daddies. You know, he went back on his word and then like I showed him proof that he had agreed to something and he basically refused to acknowledge it, but then he wants to come back around and act like we're BFFs the following week. On top of Chris not having a written agreement with Kail, they're legally not allowed to be speaking with each other. So it's definitely not him. She's talking to Joe. So that leaves one more baby daddy. It's Javi. Now, you know, the conversation kind of shifts into like sleeping with your baby daddy after you guys are broken up and trying to co-parent with one another. And, you know, she's like, listen, I'm not currently sleeping with any of my baby daddies. Do you remember that video of Joe showing his daughter Vivi his music video where he met her mom, Vivi and V? Oh my God. Well, he explains that in this podcast. He goes, you know what? My daughter just came up to me the other day and she put down her iPad and she goes, Dad, did you meet Mom at your wedding? And she really thought that was the first time they met. It's just so cute how innocent kids are. And he goes, no, like I met her when I was doing like this music video, and then he showed it to her, and I thought that was so cute. V felt like it was a little bit too soon for Vivi to see it. Remember, like V is like in her lingerie and stuff like that, so she's like, you know, I was gonna do that a little bit later, but whatever, it's okay. I do want to make a parody of it though, which would be so cute if they were to make something like that, like, you know, even now or 10 years down the line. A lot of people online have been speculating that Lux is Kail's favorite child for whatever reason, and their piece of evidence is typically that he's the one who was photographed the most on her social media. And so she acknowledges that. She's like, you know, a lot of people think that, but my son Isaac doesn't really like to have his photo taken anymore. So that's why you see less and less of him on my social media. Now, you know, Joe talks about like people expecting him to appear more in V's social media. And he's like, no, I don't live for social media. That is just not my thing. And then the conversation shifts into gender reveals and Joe and V hating them, which is a little bit funny because Kail had a mini gender reveal for her kids on the show, and they're like, listen, gender reveals are for the social media, like they weren't even a thing before, like, you know, Instagram or whatever was a really huge thing. I think it's for, V says it's for people who just want to throw parties and get attention. And she also said something that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. She says that people shouldn't even be celebrating the gender of their kid with like a gender reveal party when there's some people who can't get pregnant. I kind of felt like, I don't even know how to say it. I just don't like that. I don't like that line of thinking. I think people can celebrate whatever it is that they want to celebrate, and it doesn't take away from anyone else's like struggles. You know what I mean? Like people are still going to unfortunately suffer from infertility whether or not people have gender reveals. Kail says that the only thing she doesn't like about gender reveals is when a parent is visibly upset about what gender of child they're having. And I'm like, I feel like that is more something that like, you know, supports V's like disdain for these things. Although I am team Joe and V. I don't understand the point of a gender reveal. I would begrudgingly go to someone's gender reveal party because who cares? You're having a baby. That's amazing. Your baby's hopefully healthy. I'm going to your baby shower. I'm gonna see your child when it's born. Why do I need to come to a gender, like what do we do? Okay, it's a boy, it's a girl, now what? You know what I mean? Like I think that is enough, but to speak for like a community that you don't belong to, I don't really love it too much. Sorry. Now let's get into the jail rumors. You know how Kail was charged for allegedly assaulting her baby daddy, Chris Lopez? Well, she and Joe were talking about, again, the social media thing. Like you can't believe like everyone who's posting lovey-dovey is happy, just like me not being on V's social media doesn't mean we're getting divorced. And then Kail chimes in with a little slight shade to Teen Mom viewers by saying, listen, if everything on the internet were true, then I would be in jail right now. Okay, now this is where things get super duper juicy, you guys. You know how I was asking you guys earlier, or telling you guys earlier about like Javi allegedly trying to get like it written in their order that Chris can't be around Lincoln? Oh, we're getting to that. Of course, she saved it for the very end of the episode, but oh my God, was it explosive. So she and Joe discussed the first right of refusal, which we saw play out on this season of Teen Mom 2, where Kail was going to a funeral out of town, out of state, and then she left Isaac with one of her friends, and Joe was pissed, and rightfully so. You know, Kail has a revolving door of friends. You don't know what kind of characters these people are. It's one thing for him to leave his son with his mom or dad, but like you with your friends, I wouldn't be for it either. But then he says, listen, it's a me problem. I'm gonna have to start trusting Kail's judgment a little bit more. Me from the peanut gallery, I'm like, listen, Kail's life is a dumpster fire. She clearly has no judgment. So your instinct is right, Joe. I would keep fighting against that personally, but I digress. And then Kail drops this mega mom. She says, listen, what about when one parent doesn't want their child around someone else? How do you feel about that being put into an agreement? Joe's like, oh, well, I guess a judge can put that into there. You know what I mean? And she goes, yeah, like, you know, if I didn't want Isaac around, like you say your brother, for instance, for whatever reason. And then Joe's like, oh, well, I guess I don't know. And then she goes, because I'm going through that with one of my other baby daddies. Well, it's not Joe, because she's talking to Joe about one of her other baby daddies. She doesn't have a formal agreement with Chris because Chris cannot really allegedly be bothered with his kids. So it's Javi, right? And who would Javi try to ban from Kail's life outside of Chris Lopez? Her on and off again jump off, who she's currently pending trial for allegedly assaulting, who she's taken out multiple PFAs against and has accused him of physical violence against her. Man, you guys, some of you guys are really good at like looking court documents online. If you could like keep an eye on this, please, that would be amazing. This is, you know what? Good for Javi. If this is indeed true, good for Javi, because the relationship that Kail has with Chris is incredibly toxic from both of their own mouths. And in my opinion, I don't think the cycle is over yet. I think that they're still just gonna keep going at it and going at it and going at it. And so all Javi can do as a father is protect his son against this situation the best way he can. So if he does get this in an order, then it would be quite hard for Kail to have Chris over at her house to bump uglies, to do whatever. Remember, she said that they conceived Creed on the kitchen counter. They're gonna have to find another kitchen counter at his grandma's house, or maybe they can go to the Wawa gas station parking lot instead if they really want to hide. I don't know, but it's going to be banned if this actually does move forward. And she seemed to genuinely want to know whether or not Joe thought it was actually possible for a judge to prevent this from happening. Listen, sis, you've got 5 lawyers. It's time to call at least one of them up and get their professional opinion. Guys, what do you think about this? Will it play out on the next season of Teen Mom 2? I really want to know everything you have to say, so please make sure to leave all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and as usual, we'll chat. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.